Welcome to the Geno Stock Podcast. I'm your host Atul Raj from the bestemailmarketer.com, and today we have Phil VanDusen with us. Phil, thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, Atul, thanks for having me on the show.
Okay, so for our listeners who don't know you, can you tell them who you are and what do you do?
Sure. My name is Phil VanDusen, and I'm a branding consultant and coach for creative professionals. I've had a 35-year career, both in global branding agencies as well as global corporations as a creative executive, leading branding initiatives and also product design in, fast-moving consumer goods companies, et cetera. And then about 10 years ago, I went off on my own and started my own branding consultancy. And so I work mostly now with entrepreneurs, startups, small to medium-sized businesses to help them communicate their brand, design their brand, develop their brand strategy so they are successful in their businesses.
Okay, so what do you think? What do most businesses get wrong when it comes to branding?
I think these days, because of the kind of advent and the explosion of AI, the one thing that companies have to pay really close attention to now is what is the human face of their company. It used to be that, it was really more about your product, your service, your logo, your store, your digital presence. But because AI is making, all of those things much more impersonal, what's important really now is kind of brand tone of voice and having some sort of a human presence for your brand. And that's one of the things that I think that brands need to really pay attention to now. In terms of what brands usually get wrong, they spend much more time thinking about their logo than they should their product, service, and their customers' experience. The other thing I think companies get wrong is they don't keep a really close eye on who their competition is, because no company is operating in a blue ocean. Everybody is operating with a lot of competition around them. And companies, when they go out to market, a lot of times seem to think that they're the only ones doing what they do, and they don't make a big effort to kind of look at who their competition is and how they're doing it and what they're being successful at. And that's one of the things I do with my clients all the time is do competitive audits so they can understand who it is that they're up against.
And what after that? Like after analyzing their competitor, what should they do?
Well, it's kind of a multifaceted thing to do. There's a lot of different aspects to it. One is your product offering a premium service? Is it a budget service? Is it something that your competitive advantage is that you work very quickly? Is it that you develop a kind of a full service, hand-holding kind of business? What is your competitive advantage, essentially? And so you kind of have to evaluate who your competition is, how they're going about doing what they're doing, and what they're leveraging as their competitive advantage. And either you have to do it differently or you have to do it better. But unless you know what they're doing, you can't know what to do. When I work with clients a lot, I'll say, name 3 to 5 year top competitors and what they're doing really well and what they're not doing really well. And half the time you can't even name 3 to 5 competitors. And that's always a real tell to me in terms of the fact that there's work that has to be done. It shocks me usually how little knowledge brands have about who their competition is.
But how do we know that what our competitors are doing is good or not working?
Well, you can tell by whether they seem to be successful or not. I mean, there's only so much you can learn without seeing the actual financial books of a company, but there's so many different aspects that you can evaluate now. You can evaluate social media presences. You can evaluate a website traffic, social media traffic, engagement, comments, likes, subscribes, how engaged their audience seems to be. And you can compare that to the competitive set and evaluate whether that company is more successful than the other companies or who's the leader of the pack, essentially. So it's a lot of comparing. It's a lot of comparing different companies against each other on a whole range of different criteria.
So what red flags that tell you that this company is doing branding really bad?
What tells you if they're doing branding really bad?
Yeah.
Inconsistency. If you look across channels for, if you look across companies, the variety of social media channels that they have, or the variety of content that they have. Maybe you look at their Instagram, their Facebook, their YouTube, their website, their LinkedIn. You look at the sort of content they're doing there. You look at the branding, the color palettes, the tone of voice, the types of fonts and design styles that they're using. If there's a lot of inconsistency across all those things, they're sacrificing kind of brand equity and recognition. Because if you can't recognize that, a post is from a company that you are expecting to see or that you follow or that you happen to like, if there's inconsistencies there, then it's harder to recognize that that's who they are. That's when I work with people on developing. I just got off a call with a coaching client who I'm helping her develop a YouTube channel. And one of the things about YouTube is that, and this is a really clear example of visual branding where, if you're developing a thumbnail for a YouTube video, 50% of what people watch on YouTube is on a mobile device, right? So you're scrolling, we live in a thumb scrolling world, right? So everyone's thumb scrolling through all of these YouTube thumbnails, and you're usually seeing the thumbnail, 3/4 of an inch by, a half an inch tall on your phone. And so the thumbnail has to be super simple. It's got to have a very kind of clear color palette, a clear design layout. It's got to have, kind of a specific kind of font, a human face, hopefully, on it. Because as people are flipping through all these videos on their phone, if they've subscribed to their channel or say they really like your videos, if there's no consistency in your thumbnails on your YouTube channel, you're not going to be able to recognize that there's a video by that person really quickly, right? And you've just got a second to be able to establish that brand recognition that this content is from this person that you like. And as people watch some of your videos, over time, they'll start to understand what your thumbnails generally look like. And so they'll be able to recognize them really quickly when they come across them. It sounds like a super basic, stupid thing, right? It's like establishing visual consistency in your design on everything that you do. Because in this digital world that we live in, we're bombarded by visual content all the time. And if people can't recognize that some content is from you, then you're sunk, right? Because they're not going to read it. They're not going to stop the scroll. They're not going to click on it. So even those most basic things about visual branding and establishing consistency across what you do, across channels, across content is super, super important.
Okay. So how should a solopreneur think about branding versus a Fortune 100 company?
Yeah. Well, that's a huge difference. And I've worked with both. I work with a lot of solopreneurs, and I've worked with some of the biggest brands in the world, GE, PepsiCo, P&G. And essentially, branding is exactly the same. It's just a question of scale. The biggest challenge that enterprise level companies have is that it's difficult for them to put a face behind their brand. And that's particularly challenging for them right now because people don't trust brands, right? They don't trust the messaging from brands. Especially big brands. They think big brands are like they're pushing their advertising at them. They can smell a cell a mile away, and they don't trust big companies. So entrepreneurs actually have a leg up and an advantage over larger companies because they can put a human face and a tone of voice and a personality behind their products and their services. If you have companies like Kentucky Fried Chicken or Apple or Virgin Airlines, right, where you have a figurehead human being, so Steve Jobs, Richard Branson, Colonel Sanders himself, the Geico Gecko, right? I mean, it could even be an animation. But if you have some sort of a presence, a character, a human being behind a big enterprise level, gigantic brand, it makes it so much easier for the consumer to create an emotional attachment with that brand. But when you have a brand like P&G, right? P&G makes Ivory soap, they make Tide, they make Febreze, they make all these gigantic consumer brands. But there's no human being or human face behind that brand. So it's very difficult to emotionally connect to the brand. And that's where entrepreneurs really have an advantage because they're a human.
Yeah. Okay. So what do you wish more entrepreneurs understand about long-term nature of branding?
The long-term nature of branding?
Yeah.
I hate to sound like a broken record, but it's consistency. And it's very easy for people who work at the brand, whether you're a solopreneur or whether you're a small or medium-sized businesses, to get bored with what it is that
Yeah,
you're doing.
this happened with me.
Because you're like, oh man, our YouTube thumbnails have looked the same for 2 years, or oh, our social media posts always look the same, or our product packaging always looks the same, and let's change it, right? The only companies that benefit from changing thing every season are fashion companies, and that's because you expect them to change. But companies like, let's use P&G again. Suddenly, Tide is this laundry detergent, right? Comes in a big orange jug. And so if you were to suddenly say, oh man, I'm bored with Tide being in an orange jug, let's put Tide in a pink jug, right? Or let's put Tide in a green jug. And it's like, then you suddenly produce all this stuff in the laundry aisle, and like, instead of half the aisle being orange, now it's green. People who bought Tide their whole lives, their moms bought Tide. They're like, they would never recognize it. They would be like, where's the Tide? I don't see it. It could be a wall 15 feet tall in front of them. And they'd be like, because people recognize color faster than they recognize anything else. So the biggest, kind of danger for companies in branding long term is getting bored with their own brand. And you see examples of this all the time. Companies like PepsiCo, right? PepsiCo will get tired of their logo and they'll change the logo. Like, remember when it turned into that orb with like the little kind of smiley face shape in front of it? It changed from its flat, yin yang shape to this kind of orb looking thing. People hated it. People freaked out because the brand they grew up with, the brand they knew, the one that was in their own personal DNA as a child, was somehow being fucked with. Sorry, and it makes them angry. Like, people love familiarity. They love consistency. And if you're a brand and you get tired of your own brand and you just change it because you want to make an impact and get paid more money, then, you're playing with fire.
Same happening with Disney right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And there's a lot of this, Atul, that's a really great topic, because there's a lot of companies, large enterprise companies, that are being acquired by each other now, right? You have huge entities, Netflix or Disney, acquiring these other companies, DC Comics or the Marvel Universe or anything like that. And they're coming under these giant umbrellas of Disney Plus, right? Star Wars franchise. And suddenly these parent brands are starting to mess with these historically memorable and emotionally resonant brands that people have known and grown to love over their entire lives. And just because they're being purchased by some other big company, they're like, oh, let's change this up, right? Let's make it fresh. Like, let's put our stamp on it. And that's where the danger comes in, is because it's like change for change's sake, which is, in branding, super dangerous.
What personality trait would you attribute majority of your success to?
My success. Oh boy, you're making an assumption that I'm successful, number one. But no, it's I think that I care. When I was a creative director in big global agencies or big corporations, and I was leading large creative teams, I really cared about the people who worked for me, right? I cared that they're designers, they're creative people. They want to feel challenged. They want to feel like they're contributing, that they're able to express their creativity in a way that benefits the company they work for. They want to feel supported in their careers, like they're being challenged, like they can be promoted, they can make more money. And I've always supported the teams and the people who have worked for me and tried to do everything that I can to equip them with the tools they need to be successful. And if I do that, then the company that they work for is successful too. I kind of took this I started off my career as a teacher. I actually had my master's in painting, and I used to be a fine artist and taught painting. And it's the same thing when you're teaching people. You want to equip them with the ability to learn and to progress and to get better. And so I always approached running creative teams like being a teacher. And so I think that my success, and also when I work with clients, when I work with brands, when I work with my coaching clients, I want them to be successful, and I care about their success. And so I will put my best foot forward, my intellect, whatever it is that I have at my disposal, to make them be successful. And so I think that that's, if I could attribute my success to anything, it's my caring about the people who I work with and also the companies that I work for.
Okay, what are the top 3 books that has impacted most in your work?
3 books. Okay. It's interesting. These are books that are not design books, and they're not business books. They're more mindset books. There's a book called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, which is about how you can stay present and how you can, I'm not going to say control, but manage how your mind works.
Okay.
And it's a, incredibly seminal, successful book, sold like 50 million copies around the world. And that book has been incredibly influential on me in terms of helping me manage my own thought patterns. There's another book called Orbiting the Giant Hairball by a guy named Gordon MacKenzie. This is a business book, but it's a creative business book. Gordon MacKenzie used to be the creative director at Hallmark Cards. Hallmark Cards at the time was one of the most creative companies in the world. And Gordon MacKenzie was a creative director there. And he wrote this book called Orbiting the Giant Hairball. And the metaphor is that corporations are giant hairballs. And as creative people, you can't get sucked into it because you'll just become part of the hairball. You have to somehow operate in orbit around it because it pays you. It's what pays the bills. It keeps you employed. But in order to operate successfully as a creative person, you can't get sucked into the hairball. Anyway, great book. Any creative person who's listening, check out Gordon MacKenzie's Orbiting the Giant Hairball. It can really help you gain perspective on your career. And let me see. What else do I got around? There's another book by a guy named Richard Carlson. And this book has the stupidest self-helpy title to it that I've ever heard. Richard Carlson wrote this book called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. And it's all small stuff. Again, sold like 50 million copies. But he wrote this book called You Can Feel Good Again. And it's got this stupid California self-helpy title, which sucks. And it makes you completely minimize the quality of information that's in this book. Anyway, Richard Carlson was a psychologist. And again, it's a book around mindset and how you can observe and control your thought processes around things and how you can benefit your life, your career, your outlook on life in how you think about things. I practice meditation, Zen meditation, and which is based in Buddhist philosophy. And this sort of approach to thinking is one of those things that I am inspired by all the time. And both of those books, kind of Power of Now and You Can Feel Good Again by Richard Carlson, are both ones that kind of revolve around that idea of observing your thoughts.
So I'm curious, like, when did you started doing meditation?
When did I start?
Yeah.
I think the first time I ever did meditation, I was like 8 years old. And
Wow.
it was in school. They brought some meditation teacher to our school and they got all the kids into the auditorium, into the gymnasium actually. And we all laid down on the floor and someone walked us through this guided meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, it completely blew my mind. And I'd never experienced anything like that before. And I can't say that, from 8 years old on, I become like a devotee of Zen meditation because that's not the truth. But that's the first time I ever did it. I would say, I've meditated on and off for the last 20 years, mostly just to deal with, times of stress and things like that. But just in the last year or so, I've gotten kind of more interested in meditation as a practice and, kind of really putting some effort into it.
Okay, so for our listeners who want to get some help with you, want to connect with you, where can they go?
Yeah. You can access just generally everything I do through my website. So if you go to philVanDusen.com, that's where everything that I do is. You can join my email list to get on my newsletter. You can access my YouTube channel, my Bonfire Mastermind community, which is a coaching community that I run. If you want one-on-one coaching, all of that is accessible through my website, philVanDusen.com.
Awesome, Philip. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for sharing your wisdom.
Thank you, Atul. Thanks for having me on the show.
This is Geno Stock Podcast, and I'm your host Atul Raj from the bestemailmarketer.com, of course. So, speaking of email marketing, if you got some questions, challenges, doubt, or just simply need some help with your email marketing, then reach out to me at atul@thebestemailmarketer.com, and I'll be happy to help.